Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. It's great to see everybody here. This will call to order this Joint City Commission and CRA Board Workshop meeting on this April 18th, 2017. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce everyone on stage. To my right is on our City Commission that's here, Vice Mayor Jim Chard, Deputy Vice Mayor Shirley Johnson, Commissioner Mitch Katz. To my right is City Manager Neil Jesus and our City Attorney Max Lohman. To my left, our CRA Chair Reggie Cox, first Vice Chair Kathy Ballesteri, Vice Chair Joe Bernadelle, and Board Member Paul Zaks. We have a single agenda item today, a joint discussion on the proposed Old School Square Master Plan. And to manage everyone's expectations, we will have a brief presentation by architects Curry Sowers Aguila, landscape architects TBG, lighting specialist HLB Lighting, and Rob Steele, followed by public comment that will be limited to 2 minutes per speaker, followed by a workshop Q&A and discussion among the commission, board, and presenters, after which, with consensus direction, the master plan will go to the Historic Preservation Board in early May and will then return to the City Commission for formal adoption, after which there will be CRA and commission meetings on phasing and funding. So with that in mind, any question of the process before we start? Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, commissioners of all stripes. We are here with Jess Sowers, my partner, Jolie Aronson, our architect in charge, Simi Vitt, and Rob Steele. I'm going to turn this off, start with Rob Steele. But I just want to say we're very happy to be here. This is an expression of what the community said they wanted. That's what our goal was, and I think that hopefully you'll see that that's what we're presenting to you today. You want this, Rob? Thank you.
Please don't fall off the stage, Bob. We haven't lost anyone yet. Don't want to start today. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to all the commissioners for dedicating a good portion of your afternoons to this really important project. We're standing on probably some of the most valuable real estate in all of Palm Beach County here at Old School Square. It's a really important part of this community on a lot of fronts, and this has been a wonderful process to walk through. We've enjoyed a great deal of input from the community at large, and I think we've been pretty fastidious in the process to make sure we're listening to all the voices and trying to make good decisions. There are a lot of ways to look at Old School Square. You can look at it from a bird's eye view. You can look at it from a street view. You can look at it from the top of the parking garage. And we've tried to do that as we've entered into this analysis process.
It's the
Bottom one. Okay.
bottom right.
We have been, as I said, fastidious in taking public input. This is a depiction of the public survey that occurred. In addition to 2 charrettes in 2015, 2 public gatherings in 2016, and then a host of other meetings since the core committee was formed, drawing on more than 20 citizens that were picked from, the geographic corners of the community to make sure we had input from all fronts. So it's safe for me to say that hundreds of people participated in this process, and we're very, very confident that we have good ideas there. This is a mess. This is kind of, after all the surveys were done and we took in all kinds of information, this is what it looked like. These are all the things that people talked about and set as priorities and said, these are the things we need you to do at Old School Square. These are the existing conditions. If you could get in a helicopter and be in this vantage point, this is what it would look like today. We're moving forward, and with a lot of direction from Commission and direction from the citizens of Delray Beach, we've learned a few things that are first and foremost very important. If you look at the blue areas on this slide, it's what we will refer to throughout the day today and probably throughout our lifetimes as the park perimeter. Everyone seems very convinced that it's so important for aesthetics and all kinds of other reasons that we protect that park perimeter. We make sure that we don't have a lot of vehicular activity other than repairs and maintenance, and we keep it beautiful, and I love to call it a warm and welcoming respite from the rigors of Atlantic Avenue. Atlantic Avenue can wear you down. There's lots of great restaurants, lots of great things to do, but once in a while, particularly on a hot day, it's nice to get your feet on grass and sit in the shade and sit down and relax for a few minutes. So between landscaping, and then we'll occasionally need to use bollards, a very low, attractive bollard to make sure no vehicles can penetrate that perimeter, and also for safety's sake. A lot of times we have gatherings of more than 50,000 people on the old school square grounds. We want to make sure in this day and age we can protect it from vehicular intrusions. The yellow area in front of the pavilion and the orange area which we refer to as the park now, or the green, we'll consider that to be the park core. So we're really looking at this in a couple of pieces, park perimeter and park core, and a lot of decisions were made based on the fact that we want it to be an attractive, aesthetically pleasing area that we'll all be very proud of. This is where the Christmas tree has been erected for a number of years, and we hope to make some changes to make it a little bit safer. And at this juncture, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Curry.
Thank you. I guess I'm turning it over to
I think so.
Charlie.
Sorry about that. So one of the things that we did is we ended up with a lot of public input, and then we also ended up with the lease zones that were defined previously by the City Commission and the lease with Old School Square. So as we took all of this input, in existence, the existing tree location, which by the current lease was supposed to move, we analyzed the site, and you can see sort of these light purple arrows as circulation paths overlaid with the lease zones, this very active yellow area in the center, if I can get this to work, maybe not. And the blue areas, which are perimeters that we wanted to activate and provide more activity to provide eyes on the park, to provide a more safe environment for that park, and also to provide more interest in the park and get people interested and active in that area. So in analyzing all of that, we came up with where the new Christmas tree location seems to be ideally suited. So this is the proposed new Christmas tree location, and that red blob around it represents approximately 30,000 people, which is how many people attend all of the Christmas tree lighting events. And you can see that we could contain all of those people within our site if they so desired to do so.
And safely.
And safely, exactly. One of the other things that we garnered from our public input was this list of priorities. So as you can see, the top priority is shade. So we've got a big shade covering in the center at the pavilion.
Sorry.
Bob, could you highlight the shade portion, in the pavilion? So that's a big portion of, that's a very large shade structure. In addition, we've added areas with umbrellas, seating, trees to accentuate the shaded areas on the site. The pink area is additional seating, and you can see a lot of where we would like to locate the additional seating, predominantly on one of our circulation paths. Additional landscaping was the third priority. Lighting, where we're focusing predominantly decorative lighting on these facades. We will have public safety lighting throughout the site. Public art in that purpley blue color, so we're defining a sculpture courtyard in the front with some sculptures also on first. Environmental sustainability is a sort of hard one to show on a chart, but it is something that will be incorporated throughout the slide, or throughout the site. And then signage, and you can see sort of the red rectangles throughout, which are our primary signage locations. We also talked about food sales, moving the concession stand. We'll get into that later in the presentation. Transportation and connectivity. We've already looked at the paths and how that connects to the important accesses within Delray Beach and the site. And then water features. So in the blue, you can see our water feature locations. We've also got a children's playground, which was one of the lower priorities, but it's something that is very active on the site.
Okay, what I'm going to do is, this is the master plan now. And I'm going to tell you about all the individual pieces on this plan, and then we'll show you graphically renderings and pictures of what it means so you can see them in more detail. So I'm going to start up here on the left. Oh, did I do that? I'm going to... Yeah, okay. I'm going to start back up here on First. This is a much quieter passive area with for sculpture and a place for little movies that can be played on the theater wall, and also to have the weddings and so forth come out from the gym and congregate there. Then moving along from Swenton down, there's a big need for, this was something that, all of these issues, by the way, we got from the community. They need a much wider place for cars to come in, so you'll have some parking along here, but the most important thing is that now buses can get in and out to let children off and on. Down here is a crosswalk off of Swenton, and there's 2 ways to get back to parking on the west side. There's also a connection to get you to the concession stands, but that's in the last phase, but at least we have connectivity there. Coming to the corner, there was a big emphasis on the fact that people wanted to be able to see in from the corner to see the historic buildings. So we're removing some trees and providing this soft pathway that allows for sculpture and seating all the way through, and then on through, and connects to the park in the east and back over to Pineapple Grove Way. In the front, we have the formal kind of entrance, which is respectful of the historical character of this site, which is, of course, on the National Register. This whole front part then has benches and seating and sculpture, and the idea is to have passive activity that draws people in and activates the site. Over here, we have an entrance. This is an idea that people have asked for, to have eyes on the park. This is a private property, and it's up to them to, this is all up to them to do this if they wish. But the idea is to allow them to build to their property line, put parking somewhere else, and have eyes on the park. But that's, we hope they'll do that, but it's their business, of course. Now, we got rid of the kitty litter out there. You remember the stones that we have? Which goes to about to there. And this park now is almost twice the size of green, almost twice as much green as is now out there for football, for Frisbee, thank you. Gosh, this is tough. Now, the idea here is also, and you'll see it later, is where the market goes all the way around. And what we've done is, well, we'll tell you about that in detail when we get later. This is a palm court. There's an opportunity here for a stair and elevator with a glass elevator. People are frightened to coming down the elevator, but this is a better location to get you right to Old School Square and then back to the avenue. And then last but not least is this major covered area for the pavilion, which has tiers of grass lawn that you step up with a fountain on the back. So it opens it up from the Atlantic Avenue, but it's high enough that all we have to do is close off one side and we can have private functions in there. There's 2 snack bars. One here is a major one and a small one over here. New toilets here and new toilets right there. So I think that pretty much describes what we were asked to put on the site. And now we'll go into the detail of what it looks like when you get in closer. This is it in 3D, as you can see. Looking from Pineapple Grove Way, 2nd Street. This is looking down at the Christmas tree and the pavilion cover. And then, of course, the green market will go around on the hard surface areas that we provided. What we've done there is we've got 2 tents for the green market and a tree, 2 tents and a tree. So they'll be provided in shade. Okay, here's some of just, these aren't the final designs, but let me tell you, this is the idea. Where the Christmas tree is, we could provide also this kids fountain area to play in, which would be most of the year, and it's close enough to the bathrooms that it functions and it's legal. New kids play area, where you have to find the appropriate play elements all in one space. And of course, benches throughout. And then we provided a place, once this gets smaller, for all of these activities during that Christmas season. They're all banked along in here. So here it is. You can see how the green market works. See all the booths? And we'll tell you particularly what happens over here at the garage in a second. This is with trees. And there's your elements where the green market, the Christmas elements go. And then this is pretty exciting, I think, along the garage, to open up the garage with these folding doors, and then the green market here. And then you can also have activity in the garage. Double dip that activity. It can be parking at times, but it also can be little pop-up shops and green market activity. There's the folding idea for folding glass. And obviously we want throughout the site places to sit and eat and bring people to the site. Green market. Trash cans, try to get some attractive ones. And what was the last one? I think I missed that, didn't I? Or that was the curtain, the thing, the glass doors. So here it is with the tree, and I think there it is without the tree, which would be the majority of the year. And you can see the tiers back here. We'll get you a little closer to that in a minute. So here it is looking from Atlantic Avenue, and this is to represent where people sit and eat and just hang out in the park in this passive area. This walkway along here with the sculpture and more benches leads you into the park. All along here is this there's this fountain that spills down. We got a really good picture of that. And we priced this tent out. It's good. It'll be permanent, and it withstand a Category 5 hurricane, I believe. Up to, okay. And a palm court. Next. There's the palm corridor on the right-hand side. And you've seen, this is another idea for benches and tables. Of course, we got to have a lot of places for bikes to park, Jim. And then, of course, special lighting, which Simi's going to get into and tell you about all the opportunities we have for that kind of exciting wayfaring ways and ways to light up the building. Here's a close-up of that tent that would be permanent. And there you see this fountain. This could be really exciting looking from Atlantic Avenue. And it also provides a barrier, so we only have to cover up and close one side for private things. This is a glass elevator stair, something we did somewhere else, but it'd be similar to that idea. Tent, as I said, Bird Air gave us a price on this. Well-known tent company. And here's the idea of these tiers that step up, these grass tiers. This underneath the tent, we would have synthetic grass. They've got some very nice synthetic grass, but that'd be the only place we put that. Another shot looking at the back of the pavilion area. Obviously, we're going to have benches of different types, sometimes around a tree perhaps. Next. Keep on going. Lighting, which Simi's going to tell you a little more about. And then have this formal entrance as you come in, which is respectful for the historical character of the great old buildings, with a fountain here and our little statue of the little boy that's there, and idea of sculpture. Going to light up the buildings. I think that's terribly important, something everybody really wanted. Let you know that Old School Square is alive and working. And it's an idea of a fountain. And once again, lighting up the building. Okay, from the corner, you can see how this opens up and walks people in and takes them back to that garden area, to the park area. This is an idea of the art element sign. I'm supposed to call it an art element because it represents, of course, Old School Square. And it's a dual-faced sign that tells activity that's going on. And Rob will tell you a little more about that. We have these elements here to keep cars from running in, and then some benches that are designed, sitting areas that will also keep cars from running in. The whole perimeter walkway, I know, is going to be the new criteria for the city for sidewalks, which I think they're involved in trying to determine a different way of doing it than the bricks that are there now. And here's a shot of, well, here's the lighting summary. Sorry, let me introduce Simi here, our lighting expert.
Hi. Yeah, if you can.
Right there.
Which one is
bottom,
the bottom one? Okay. So my name is Simi Veit. I'm with HLB Lighting Design. We're the lighting consultants for the project. And so Bob and Jess brought us on to help with the master plan. So there's a couple key items that I want to talk about specifically for lighting. Our main goal here is really to use lighting to activate the space to become an economic driver at night. So people are coming in and out of the building for all the different activities. And we want to make sure that the space, entire space feels safe from a public safety point of view, but also is fun and enjoyable to be in. We're going to create visual cues to assist with wayfinding and safety. So I like to say, I would like to put the right light in the right place at the right time. And you can create a really enjoyable environment that is extremely safe, but doesn't bleed into the adjacent properties. We also are going to create hierarchy and visual interest with different layers of light, which I'll get into in the once we go through the design. We're going to be using LED. LED is the standard now for lighting. And so sometimes LED is perceived as being very cool and very blue compared to what you're used to the normal street lighting as being high pressure sodium. So we're going to be using neutral and warm correlated color temperatures so the space doesn't feel too blue or too warm. We also, as Bob mentioned, will be lighting up all the buildings, so celebrating this historical architecture. With LEDs today, you can have it as white most of the time, and then for special events, change it to color, or for holidays. You can also do shows as well, which is very exciting. And then also, we're going to be designing within the City of Delray Beach's luminance criteria. So we've been working with Steve Hines from the Emergency Management, and he's been giving us a lot of great ideas, and so we've been taking that into account to meet all the requirements for SEPTED. And then also, since we're going to be using LED, it's going to be very energy efficient, but I like to say designing, you need to be energy effective. You only have so many watts you can use, so you want to use those watts in an effective way to create a really effective design. And then also, we have to provide optical control to reduce light trespass and light pollution, again, so you're not bleeding into these adjacent properties or up into the sky. And then we need to make sure we're using applicable luminaires for the environment. So we are right next to the beach, so we want to make sure that we're using manufacturers that are going to last for the life of the project. And then last but not least, we want to make sure we're adhering to the budget and the schedule and making sure that we're using products that are appropriate for this environment, for this budget, and we'll get to the site on time. So the next slide, thanks. So I'm going to dive a little bit into the design. So we have 3 layers of light. We have our destination light, we have our ambient light, and we have our nuance lighting. So destination light is lighting that's in the distance that draws you in, that is something that really brings you into a space. So an example of that is our color changing lighting on the buildings. We want to upgrade the lighting within the breezeway that connects the museum to the Crest Theater. And so all of that draws you into the space. The ambient lighting will be provided by our existing street poles and also new street poles. This is just lighting that is really for public safety and make sure that we are just lighting the space evenly and uniformly so we can really see into the shadows and you can see the activity that's going on in the space. And then we have our nuance lighting. So those are the accent lights, the little lights that are the sparkle and the linear lights that are in the paveway, as well as the small low-level bollards, the accent light in the fountain. And we also have in the pavilion, we're proposing having little firefly lights that'll be within the little step lights that'll be used just for safety and wayfinding, but as well as fun and sparkle. Next slide. And then on the east side of the park, you can see we have more ambient lighting. We've got our pole lights that'll be providing lighting for the center portion of the grass and the activity area, and then also we'll have a dual capability of providing lighting on the pathway where the green market's going to be. We have low-level bollards in the shrubbery and the foliage by the trees, and then we also have uplights in our palm court too, which is again more of that nuance lighting. And the really fun design that we're proposing is within the Christmas tree base is to have in-grade uplights that'll be sparkly and colorful when the Christmas tree is not there. So in summary, our ultimate goal here is to provide lighting that will really put the right light in the right place at the right time, that's going to create an energy effective design that'll be provide public safety, a comfortable environment, and really make Old School Square an economic driver for Delray Beach after dark. So I'm gonna pass it back.
Okay, one lighting comment. The police and fire department would have the ability from a smartphone in their vehicle or any other place to bring the whole campus up to 100% lighting at any point in time for an emergency situation, which I think is critical in a 5-acre campus. You saw in one of the corner shots a picture of sculpture art. I'm not going to belittle it by calling it a sign, but we will have messages letting people know what goes on the campus on those pieces of sculpture art. The Cornell Museum is about to undergo a $500,000 renovation that will start in just a very few days. And that museum is a contemporary art museum. Contemporary art is popular on the campus in historic sites. There are lots of national and international precedents on this front. The messaging is also available for, again, public safety in the event of a hurricane or some other event. The police department would be able to put messages on all 5 of these signs on the campus. Picture with me, if you will, a Green Market Day. I think the Green Market's a great tradition in Delray Beach. It's a great economic driver for the downtown, and 2,000 or 3,000 people come every week. If you have 5 signs on the perimeter of the campus that broadcast the fact that it's Green Market today from 9 to 1, I think you'll double the number of people that are coming to the Green Market. And the Green Market is one of those activities that doesn't put any pressure on city services or parking or anything. It just brings customers from far and wide that can wander up and down the streets. So it'll be a great enhancement. This will help Old School Square tremendously, because I still believe, as much as we like to think of ourselves as a much known and much beloved place, there are lots of people that live here or visit here that don't know completely what's going on. This is an opportunity for us to communicate with every car or person that walks by Old School Square. So it's a key point in the history of this institution.
Well, I think I got the short straw. I got to talk about money. How are we going to afford this, right? So as Rob mentioned, the art sculpture signs, I think that is a primary focus that we want to focus on for this year. There's monies that's been allocated already for this summer, and that's phase 1. That's what we represented, phase 1 at $515,000. And what that includes are the art signs, the foundation for the Christmas tree, and also lighting up Cornell Museum, the facade for the Cornell Museum. So we're comfortable in that we can make this happen for this cost. Now, in phase two, highlighted is the area. Now, we broke this up in multiple phases, and it doesn't mean that the city can move forward in multi-phases or a single phase. It's just a logical way that if you do want to phase this, it could be done. So this is really the perimeter. This is the, basically we're thinking of working from the outside in. This includes everything that Bob talked about with the front drop-off off of Swinton, the mid-crossing block, the sculptures, the passive park in front of Atlantic, and also on First. So that cost represents about $2.25 million. Now, phase three is also working on the outside, working from Pineapple Grove. We do the lawn, and then the fountain for the Christmas tree. We need to orchestrate that. The palm court, all those trees that need to be put in there, because that was the number one comment, was the shade, seating, and that's where a lot of our trees are going to end up going. And we also have the memorial court going right off of Pineapple Grove. So phase three represents about $3.5 million. Now, phase four is, as Rob was talking about, this is really the central core of the whole site. And this includes the tinsel structure, it includes the seating, the fountain, the bathrooms, the concessions, the removal of the existing bathrooms, and that represents a little over $5 million. Now, these numbers that we came up with, this is all inclusive. It includes design fees, general contractor fees. It includes also a contingency of 15 to 20, I think 20%, 15%. So, so we're pretty comfortable that these are good, solid numbers.
Thanks, Jess. I want to speak about the amphitheater area because it's so critically important, I think, to the long-term success of Old School Square and the community as well. A couple months ago, we had a series of educational shows here at Old School Square. We had 2 sold-out shows with about 339 students back-to-back here in the Crest Theater. There are a lot more than 339 students in the Delray Beach school system, and I hate more than anything in the world to turn away students from an educational opportunity. We'll never be able to get all the kids a chance to see what they need to see, be exposed to the arts, which we don't have in the public schools. And we have a chance to be that stopgap at Old School Square. We can provide artistic experiences and educational experiences for kids, but we need more space to do it for more kids. That outdoor amphitheater would allow us to bring in 2,500 students at a time. We're opening up the bus area. We can serve all the students when we're in that situation. What else does it do for us? 2,500 seats would allow us to book A-list talent, become a tourist destination point. We can activate the square without requiring a great deal of additional city services. We don't have to close streets. We don't have to do parking, make changes to parking. If we have 20 or 30 of those shows a year, it really provides a significant economic driver to the community, and it provides a lot more experiences for people. Helps us drive tourism. It's just a wonderful fill in the community. We're able to bring in a different diversity of talent, and it's just a huge gap, and it helps Old School Square generate some additional revenue so that over time we're able to become more independent in terms of needing public support, because it can be a real profitable thing for us to do as well. The reason it's phase 4, I'd love to see it done in phase 3, but it needs to be separated because I would really hope to get private funding. It makes sense to have it be phase 4 because we've just finished painting the buildings and replacing all the roofs to the tune of $1.4 million. The campus looks beautiful. Now, if we take care of the perimeter, make the aesthetics of the campus look beautiful, it's a lot easier to ask for a naming right for someone to underwrite the construction of that amphitheater area, if they're looking at it dead center in a park, that is one of the most attractive spaces in all of Palm Beach County.
Thank you, Rob. Let's see, what else do we have to show you? I think we have one more slide. Who can click?
Actually, just very quickly,
Oh, we're going to go through the numbers.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
Well, just real quickly, these are numbers that's in your packet, and it's also going to be on the CRA website, right, Jeff? That all these numbers. So we won't bore you and go you through all this. But the total construction cost we're estimating is a little over $11 million for all the phases. This is more of a detailed breakdown of how we got to those numbers. So we won't go over each of those tonight, unless you want to. It's up to you.
And then we end with this, which is what everybody wants, is to be able to see the campus, make it a safe and active place to come even at night. And we leave you with that and ask you for your questions.
Thank you, Bob. Great presentation. Thank you all. At this time, we're going to open up the workshop for a public comment. It's really similar to other public meetings. If there's two microphones or one microphone here, step up, care to, and just give us your name and address. You can have minutes, we have a formal clock, but you need to leave adequate time for the discussion. And it's not so much Q&A between you and the presenters, but I would ask the presenters to note questions that do come up, so perhaps address those in the context of the dialogue that'll follow. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Ingrid Lee, and I live in Bexley Park. And I was involved in some of the meetings that folks had about what we were going to do with Old School Square. And I put in my 2 cents about we need a playground, we need to keep our field. So I am very happy to see what has, come up in the final project. I think that from what I heard in the conversations, this fits along with what everybody's concerns were. So I don't really have any question. Well, I have one question, but I just wanted to say I think you guys did a great job. I think you incorporated a lot of the things that people wanted, and I'm happy to see sort of like a vision for Old School Square into the future. My question is about the walkways that go from the corner leading you into the playground area. What are they made of? I may have missed this. I was 10 minutes late. Is it solid where you can push a wheelchair? Is it mulch? Is it gravel? I see it was kind of kitty catter with like rectangles going this way. So I just wanted to get more information about that path.
Yeah, the intention there is to make a soft walkway. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like you to just incorporate those comments
Okay.
when we come back. Otherwise, we're going to spend the rest of the afternoon Q&A. So, anybody else from the public? Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm Michael Costin, 1145 Harbor Drive. A question, again, on the walkway, the children play area, about preventing any vehicles, because we know how sometimes people drive in Florida, from leaving the highway and coming off onto the sidewalk and potentially harming anyone on the walkways or in the playground area.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Wow, you guys get off easy today.
They're shy.
If you'd step up, please, and give us your name.
Deborah Dowd, 7 Northeast 16th Court. I was on the Master Plan Committee, and I first of all wanted to recognize the other people, so perhaps we could have them stand, those that put many hours in, stand and say, let us know who you are. All right, thank you. And then my other quick point was I was also involved with the charrettes prior to being on this master plan committee, and there were many public opinions that were fairly negative about so many of the plans that were brought up and ideas. Yet when we brought the master plan to the public this time, we never got negative commands. We had so much positive feedback, and it was a great feeling. It was a lot of the people that were at the charrettes not liking what they saw. When they saw the final plan, they loved it. Just wanted to give you that info.
Yes, sir.
Jay Finst, 707 Place Tavon, Delray Beach, Florida. Question on the amphitheater. I heard two comments. One comment said seating for 2,500 seating, and the other comment was it'll be terraced artificial turf. So maybe I heard it wrong, because currently at the amphitheater, people bring their own folding chairs and put it out on the lawn. So is this 2,500 seating, or is it artificial terraced turf?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Price Patton, 1020 Tamarind Road, Delray Beach. I have the pleasure of serving on the Historic Preservation Board as well. Just to remind, I think this plan has morphed into a much better plan than the hardscape that came out a couple of years ago. I just want to reiterate that this is an historic site, that trees are part of the historic space, that they should be respected, and if you got it, maybe you got to move them, but don't get rid of them. We want to keep our green space. I'm not sure that the Palm Court is a great shade area. I think it's an interesting incorporation. And then also urge you to consult with the city's historic preservation planner, who at some point she hadn't been consulted at all. So I think her input is needed for this too. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Just a tiny comment. Whenever I come to Old School Square, oftentimes I park across the street by the CRA lot or back behind Softs. And then I come to Swinton and I don't run as quick as I used to. And so I'm really asking for some kind of a lighting thing or something on that crosswalk that's mid-block, because nobody walks to the corners. We just need something in there that will stop traffic and let us run a little slower.
I was jaywalking myself this afternoon. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Mitzi Cates, 8th Avenue, Delray. I heard Rob mention that he's looking for naming rights for the amphitheater, but I'd like to hear more about how the city's going to be able to afford the $7 million that won't be part of that.
Anybody else?
Right here. Eric.
Yes, sir.
Capital.
Compared to what we started with, the plan itself looks quite decent. But I have to think about Swinton, Atlantic Avenue. If it's successful, the amount of people it'll draw, buses bringing in loads of kids, the garage, which is already filled a couple nights a week. Where is it all going to go? We already have IPEC, Atlantic Crossing. Swinton's Commons is trying to get in that area. I think the design's beautiful. I don't think we can handle it. And I don't think we can handle $11.5 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Great comments. A number of you have participated along the way. Second time. Anybody else?
Okay.
All right, seeing none, we'll close out public comment and we'll move on to discussion. I thought maybe what we do is, I think some of those are great comments. I'm sure they're going to come up in some context, but if you've kept a record of those questions, it doesn't come up in discussion, circle back.
Would you like me to
Try
to answer some of them, or you guys want to handle it?
You can hit them quickly.
Okay.
So what is the material?
The walkway, that was supposed to be a quite passive, soft way to enter. We need to enter the museum from the corner and get people back into the site. And that, with benches and art walk, I think that'll start to do it. In terms of some, I'll answer another one about the trees. We really don't intend to take down any trees except for perhaps in the corner there and move them somewhere else, so you should get that visibility from the corner into the site. But the rest of the trees may be trimmed a bit. I know the big tree next to the museum is going to have some branches trimmed from that.
With the walkway, the question was, what's the material? The material is, it's going to be a concrete, but it's going to be an interesting pattern. But it's all going to be wheelchair accessible.
Oh, good. Could we have the drawing back up with the corner? We can't do that, huh?
Can we do it from here?
No, from the corner site, because this is the one to do with the cars coming in. We did provide some blocking from cars. There, you see that as you come in? Oh, go back one, thank you. So that cars can't run in. This is particularly the most dangerous part for cars maybe running into the site. So we're going to have some of these elements around the sidewalk. The ones on the side are actually benches you can sit on, but solid enough to stop a car. So we are doing that. Sometimes we'll do it with sculpture pads, sometimes we'll do it with trees, but we are cognizant of that.
In addition, in areas where we are going to use it for temporary access, such as loading in the green market and unloading, there will be removable bollards to stop unwanted vehicles, but to allow them in when necessary.
Thank you. The seating for 2,500, actually what we have is, I didn't mention it, but the last highest two tiers of the grass levels will have a storage area, about a 20-foot wide storage area, where we'll store portable chairs so people can use them. And then you sit on the chairs on the grass steps, if you will.
Right. One of the main things there is flexibility, so that Old School Square can rent out chairs and set them up for certain events, or lawn chairs can be brought by the public for other events, or blankets can be laid out. So it's going to have this artificial grass surface, but then the flexibility to set up chairs or not as the event demands.
The historical board comments, nothing is more sacred than keeping this thing historically pure. We're not going to touch the buildings, we're just simply going to enhance them. And anything new we put in by historical guidelines should be modern and distinct and separate from the character. And we will be, of course, going to the historic board on all of this.
Mid-block crossing.
Mid-block crossing, good idea. Simi actually showed us a light that you could put in you want to talk about it?
The solar powered
Yeah. Little solar powered lights that go into the concrete. She said that in the hurricane, they were underwater in the Northeast for 3 days and they still all stayed on and lit. So
It's the only thing that survived.
okay, we're almost.
How's the city going to pay for it?
Well,
We'll get into that.
thank you. Thank you, Mayor. And where will the people park? Well, that's of course always a problem, but I think that part of this is that we're going to draw people who live downtown, who are already downtown, and will be active in terms of just coming to the park.
That's it.
Thank you for that. Great questions. Thank you. All right. This is a joint workshop. It's Q&A to the presenters, discussion among ourselves. So it's really a very informal conversation. Yes, Mr. Zaks.
Thank you. Raise my hand because I have to teach a class at West Palm in an hour.
Get
Do this
practice.
quickly.
Okay.
Good job, Bob, as always. Thank you for a good presentation. One of the concerns that I had, every year the CRA has been putting new sod on the main lawn. Is there an eye towards, are we doing a different kind of grass, or with the activity on the main lawn that we're anticipating with the new design, do we keep having to replace it every year?
Yeah, this is knocking
Okay.
down as we go.
One of the main things that we're anticipating is that due to the lower amount of activity on the main lawn, especially in those passive areas, we will not be having tents set up there. We will not have cars drive in and out. The activity will be kept to a minimum as a normal park level. Therefore, that grass will not be needing to be replaced.
And that's why we have pedestrian ways to walk, so the majority of pedestrians will walk. It won't tear up the grass so much.
And then the other thing is that in the back, on the east lawn area, we have that entire drive around, so that as cars load in and out the Green Market and other events, they will have a vehicular path, so they won't be driving across the grass and won't be ripping it up.
The old school square lease with the city of Delray Beach also limits the types of activity that can occur on there to be pretty much pedestrian, low impact.
I think getting the Green Market on the exterior hopefully will cover most of that, because that's what's tearing up the lawn every year.
That's why this is the hard surface that provided for the Green Market.
All right, I've got a few. We had a presentation, or the DDA put on a presentation last week. Bob Gibbs was in town, who's a retail expert, and he provided a great example of what appeared to be relatively inexpensive pop-up retail space. It was a place in Michigan. Rob probably knows it. I've actually been there, and it's very cleverly done, and it's something that wouldn't require any construction expense to the garage. And so that may be something where I recognize that some of the phasing is going to be blended based on funding and priority, but I thought that was directly applicable to this. Secondly, regarding the paving, I think a lot of people underestimate or kind of relegate that to a secondary concern in terms of the quality of the material. And I've gotten a lot of compliments in the city's decision to use the tabby stone that we've got there now, which is actually a natural aggregate with the shell rock in it, and it's great to walk on when it's wet. It doesn't slip, and it has all the attributes that you'd want, but it's interesting to look at as well. The tinsel structure, that price that you have, is that been priced out with someone who actually does those types of?
Bird Air, yes. We went to one and only one, but Bird Air is the one who did it, yes.
Okay. The rendering, and we talked about this before, the rendering at the corner seems to suggest that it's a seamless transition between Swinton and Atlantic in the park. In other words, there's no elevated curb there. And many planning conferences, I mentioned this, I think, to you, Bob, that is a design feature that's very much in vogue, that even though it's a 6 or 8 inch curb for a vehicle, you can't mount it. And I'm going to cover the fire rescue chief's ears while we talk about this, but it psychologically provides the lack of the barrier makes a very seamless appearance between the park and the street. And if there were other measures to protect cars and trucks from mounting at retractable bollards or just trees or whatever, it's pretty to look at. I think that's why your artist illustrated it that way. I didn't know if that was actually part of the plan.
Yeah, actually it was. I know what you're after. It's sort of a catch-22, because so many people wanted to be able to look in and see the museum, so we took out 4 trees there. What you see is actually where the handicap access crossing the 2 corners are, but the corners actually, that's the way it is right now. Now, we did put the bollards back, to make sure that the cars couldn't penetrate the site. Maybe it's something we could bring forth a little closer to the street and make it more obvious that the cars better not run in there.
Even along Atlantic, where you've got the step up there, Just hitting a couple more quick things. I think in general that well, let me just hit back to this. I know that we have talked individually recently over the last couple years about signage. And I think that there's universal agreement that, you know, the signage is woefully inadequate, both in location or visibility. I think that we need to keep in mind that any presentation that deals with digital signage is problematic. And it's problematic for a number of reasons, the most significant of which is if we allow it for you, our hands are tied from prohibiting it for anybody in the city that wants to use digital signage, which is why you don't see a lot of digital signage in Florida, unless it's a city really wants to make that. So the city attorney can weigh in a little bit at the appropriate time, but there's a lot of restrictions on content and advertising versus public service announcements, and it's a slippery slope. So what may be good for Old School Square in terms of digital signage may not serve the city well overall, and so that's going to have to be part of a more technical conversation. But I think that there's nobody that thinks that the signage that you have now is anywhere near adequate, or certainly even honorific of what you're proposing here. So those are just some general observations, other than, I said it after the last charrette and reached out to you individually. I think the plan is, as a conceptual master plan compared to where we started, it's a great plan, and I think that we're never going to make everybody happy with all the little details. In fact, maybe if everybody's a little upset, then we know that we've kind of addressed everybody's concerns. But you really have done a great job, I think, of incorporating the comments which may have been contrary to your own thinking as architects and landscape architects. I've got a lot of positive feedback that people appreciate the time that you took. It's been a very methodical process, and I think it's a great plan. How we phase it, how we pay for it is certainly going to be a challenge, which we'll get to, but is a framework for what we need. I mean, I was talking with, I don't know who I was talking with earlier today about this. Bill Branning, I see out there. We've had, the park's been here for the better part of 30 years, and with the exception of some repair and maintenance, the restrooms, a little bit on the green, we really haven't invested in that. And if you look at this investment for the next 20 or 30 years, and what that rate of return on that investment to create something like this, a real 21st century urban park, I think the numbers start to seem a little less significant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Katz?
My question was on phase one, Christmas tree relocation, those costs. If, I understand you have a plan there for the fountain. Does that 500,000, is that the fountain as the structure for that? Or is that a temporary replacement and then a permanent mounting for it?
The 500,000 is the first phase, which is the foundation for the tree, the lighting of the Crest Theater, or the museum, and the signage.
I think in addition to that, the foundation for the Christmas tree is a donut with an empty center. So in phase 3, we'll come back and fill in the center of the donut with the lighting and the splash pad. So it is separated, and they do not have to be done at the same time.
So there's no duplicate cost there?
There is no duplicate cost, and there is nothing that's going to be put in temporarily and taken back out. It's just that we will go in and fill in the center of the Christmas trees donut.
So the plumbing and the electric would be part of the first phase, and then you just...
The electric will be part of the first phase. The plumbing will come in as part of the third phase.
Have we looked, I'm guessing if I look through phase 3, I'd see the cost there to see if we wanted to move up.
Yes, you would see it as a line item in there, and I believe it's called the splash fountain.
Is that possible, because the timing they want the tree moved this year, is that possible to be able to done at once?
My understanding is, yes, we could have it done at once. It's not very extensive for the design of that splash fountain. It's more the cost that becomes how we divvy that cost up.
Right now, the city has a consultant on board designing accommodation because we know the season's going to be basically over.
7 months.
It's got to get in place in time for the holidays. So there's time.
Right, the window is closing.
We do a lot of duplication of work here because we do phases of a lot of things without planning. I mean, just last week, the city workers had to rip up pavers that the CRA just put down in front of the firehouse to put pipe in for the lighting that they've been talking about years to make that light where the firefighters could control. And we're finally gonna make that happen. But, you know, just a year ago, not even a year ago, we didn't, while that was up, we didn't put the piping in because we didn't plan that.
Yeah, we do a lot of work with the engineer that the city has selected to do the foundation for the tree. So we will be coordinating that with them to make sure that we're not duplicating or tearing anything out.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to congratulate the core committee and the technical team who put this plan together. It's a masterful plan. I have a particular affection with Old School Square, as I've shared with you, because my school started there and Joe Giddy was kind enough to open the school to us. So we've always had this particular affinity with that particular site. However, being in this community, we also know the history behind this site. And there are discussions about this among our friends in the community. I know Rob recently initiated some educational opportunities, and we were also beneficiary of this, where a lot of our young people were brought into the campus just to see. And a lot of them was the first time that they were coming on Old School Square. We want this to change. If we are going to be spending this kind of money in order to be, as the mayor mentioned, like a first century type, a 21st century type site, we need to incorporate the human element into this. This should not be a question of concrete building and pavers and tents and things like this. It has to also incorporate the element that has been lacking in a lot of the decisions that we've made in this community. And so we stand with you, all you are to do this, because I can see the goodwill in your effort, and we are going to be standing with you to ensure that we play our part to make this happen.
So more inclusive programming, I think you've heard that quite a bit.
Thank you. As part of the evolution of Old School Square into an arts and entertainment park, we hope to strike up a happy balance between 50% locally produced activations on the square of all nature, free, sometimes ticketed, sometimes donations, so that students and adults and seniors have an opportunity to perform and see, you know, their community members perform on Old School Square.
One more question.
Sure, Commissioner
Just the last question was about the lighting. It's more than our city attorney. I understand the rules, not the lighting, I'm sorry, the signage. I understand the rules, the new Supreme Court decision and having to change the rules with the signage. We can't dictate, we have to be very careful of what is on the signage, but the type, how it's delivered is not, I don't think, as important, because it's more of what the messaging can't be restricted. Anyway, that's my questions. I know a lot of other cities I've seen recently invested a lot in this digital signage. I think Tamarack just had some new ones installed. And it's definitely, you know, to be able to put put, especially, I mean, just to be able to use this for emergencies, things like that. But as long as they're using it just for programming, I don't see a problem with it. But I want to make sure.
Max, why don't you hit he's a lawyer, folks, so buckle up. But he's good with those succinct explanations, so.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, it's, the regulations for sign code always have to be content neutral. They have to be limited to time, place, and manner. And when it comes to digital signage, that's usually the best way to go about regulating it like any sign, but it does lend itself to some manageable regulations with that, with the frequency with which the face of the sign changes or the message changes. You can regulate that. You can regulate to minimize bouncing or animated, so that it's just as a change of copy. There's different ways to handle it. Yes, you have to stay away from the content. Obviously, you can require that it not be off-premises signage that can only inform people of what's happening or what's going on at the premises. Municipalities, you are correct, a lot of them are going to that, and they abide by their own regulations, and they require that same amount of time of rollover, as well as with the message, and they regulate it for public use as it relates to the message on public property. There are some ways to go about it, but it will be a very detailed and fact-specific analysis if it was the Commission's desire to have us investigate this and go into it. I've drafted some regulations in this regard in another municipality. Some of that would carry over, but obviously it's always fact-specific. It's not uncommon for municipalities now to allow certain types of venues to use what's LED changeable copy sign under certain circumstances. But again, it's always a fact-specific analysis, and you have to be very careful about it because you can't favor one type of speech over another. And if you're not carefully crafted, then you could open the door potentially to having all of your businesses or entities coming in and wanting changeable copy signs. And I don't really think, obviously it's for the Commission to decide, but I don't get the feeling that Atlantic Avenue and downtown Delray, that you want a Vegas kind of an atmosphere. And that's kind of the slippery slope you can go down with the changeable copy. Thank you, Max.
Mr.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. You've done a wonderful job. I'm hoping to see some of these plans implemented as soon as possible. The expense, I'm sure, we'll eventually take care of somehow, some way. I like the idea of someone with a naming right to the canopy. I'd like to start off by, and I don't know if we did or not, really talk about the Christmas tree implementation. We have about 7 months left before we have to do something. And I don't know, are we working on that site to make that happen? Okay, thank you. The second is the tree canopy maintenance. I would not like to see any tree removed that if you move it, it might die, because sometimes just touching a tree is enough to destroy it. Just to welcome in someone to see the museum, the Cornell Museum. I'd like to have some other type of invite, if we can possibly avoid that. The idea is to plant more trees, not to remove them. Number 3, I'm not clear about the area under the canopy, under the tent. It was a little vague as to what we're going to do. I don't encourage people to bring their own chairs. That's a little difficult. I just didn't get a good feeling as to what we were doing there. And I thought I heard you say that there would be grass. And if you're going to have
the main
grass,
thing is,
synthetic grass.
yeah, if you take a look, these are grass steps similar to this, but what we're talking about, because it's under a permanent cover, we want to use AstroTurf so the grass won't die, so it'll be a much nicer seating environment. We do want to allow flexibility so that you could have a night where people can bring out blankets and put out their own blankets, where it's less intensive on the Old School Square staff. But the other thing that they can't do now is they don't have a place to store chairs. And I think for ticketed events, the idea would be to be able to set up numerous rows of chairs by the staff, and under the top 2 layers, there'll be a storage space for those chairs. The big thing really is to provide flexibility so that Rob and his team can program it in the ways that they find most appropriate.
Very good. I'm happy to hear also that we're going to start encouraging cultural productions, plays, different type of ethnic groups who can come and perform, that would be wonderful. Also, it might start to unite the various communities because everyone wants to hear their type music, and then maybe other groups will join in and enjoy it also. They might never have heard it. We already have the drum circle. I think Commissioner Chard might talk about that. Be a wonderful thing to get everyone bring your own drum. That was about it. I thank you.
Can I
Wonderful
mention
job.
one
Beautiful.
thing about your trees? We don't intend to eliminate any trees. The four I was talking about are small enough that our landscape architect said we can move. The big one next to the museum is too big, so we're just going to trim it. But we won't lose any. We're just adding.
The Deputy Vice Mayor also asked about the tree. I think that's a bit of a two-part question. Assuming our fabricator delivers on time, which is not germane to this, I think was your question whether the foundation is going to be ready to accept it.
Whatever we're going to do for this season, is it not going to be a duplication of work? We're going to do something just to accommodate our season and then have to come back and rip something out.
It's not part of our scope, actually. The engineering department has already contracted someone to provide the foundation. We are coordinating with them, and we are providing them the location so that they will put the foundation where this master plan has it. But that is already under works, and I've already seen designs for that foundation.
Now, aren't there other things like, I don't know if they still have the merry-go-round, or that's all going to be taken care of?
Those are already being placed in very similar locations, at least they were last year, very similar locations to where we have shown them that's where they were last year.
Thank you. Thank you.
The rest will be at Reggie Cox's house.
I'll be there.
Kathy Ballesteri.
Thank you. So I also want to echo that I think this is a great concept. I think the core committee did a great job on this project. One of the things that I'm coming back to is the sod issue, because it is our board that keeps having this come back to us every time that needs to be replaced. And I don't know that you really addressed it, especially after the holiday season. And I see where in phase 4 you have the AstroTurf and how much that costs. So I can only imagine it was probably a cost factor that you didn't want to, that you were maybe looking at. But I still think we're going to have some problems where it's related to where the tree's going to be placed and those other activities over the holiday season. You're going to have a lot of foot traffic over that area. So that sod may end up still realistically needing to be replaced over time. That's just to be noted.
Let me just address part of that, Kathy. I think part of the disruption of that has been the equipment needed to erect a steel structure, so that before the tree ever opened, there was so much undermining of what was there that by the time after a few rains, and our understanding is because of the lightness and the assembly of this, it's going to be far less complicated. So we'll be starting off with a lot less wear and tear, but I think that maintenance expenses have always been a bit of a shortcoming, that we're great on the grand ideas, but how we keep them grand has been a little problematic. So I think we're going to have to figure there's between the various, you mentioned 30,000 people. I think that's a bit of a one-off number, but still over the course of a holiday or whatever you've got, there's going to be a...
Completely agree. I watched like a hawk during Delray Affair to see what happened out there. We put a 100% ban on any vehicles except a golf cart. So everyone grumbled about it because it was harder to move things in and out of there, and it took a little longer. But a couple days after Delray Affair, it looked like it never happened there. You water the lawn for a couple days and mow it, and it looks fine. So I completely concur. Vehicles and mechanizations are really the threat to the grass. I hope we never have to replace anything, Kathy, only in the event of a meteor strike or something of that nature.
Don't say that, please.
But I think one of the big keys, and I wanted to pull this slide up so you can look, is that path that really cuts through the site that's all paved on First, that goes from Atlantic back to the garage, right past that Christmas tree location. and it has enough room so that the installation equipment can come straight there and won't tear up any grass in the process. In addition, that entire circuit around that east lawn is drivable so that all of that load in does not have to happen on any amount of grass.
Sure. Okay. That satisfies me a little better than you just didn't think it was going to be impacted, because it's still going to be impacted somewhat. I'm not sure whether we're going to get to this next question or not between all of us, but my question relates to the phasing. One, how long do you expect for each of these phases to take, especially phase one? And then the second part of that relates to the signage, even though I understand there's a little bit of a issue as to what type of signage. My thoughts might be that if it's static, even though it's digital, I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but the question for the signage is, I see you have the signs placed in phase one and then again in phase two, not really listing how many signs. Is there a reason why you chose to put
That was actually changed. I think you might be looking at the draft version. In this most recent version, all the signs have been moved to phase one.
Yeah, we got real prices. We found it was a lot less expensive than we had anticipated, so.
Okay.
Question on those prices, though. One, it says small sign, 75,000, large sign, 75,000.
90.
Or 90,000, but they're same
right.
price.
There's 3 small signs and 2 large signs. The 2 large signs, I believe, are 45,000
Got it.
apiece, and the 3 small signs are 30,000 apiece.
Correct.
And then the time frame for the phases?
Phase one, in talking with the CRA, needs to be committed this fiscal year.
Right, we have funding of about 400,000 left this fiscal year. We'll phase one, which includes the foundation for the Christmas tree, and if it is the signs or the lighting, there may need to be a choice. I think in the number you saw was 515,000, which, that's 100,000 more right now that we have budgeted for, but I think it just depends on the timing on the signage, I think, too, as far as which ones get selected. And then we'll have to see as far as if there's adjustments that can be made or not.
Okay. And as far as the process moving forward at this point, will this be coming back to our board, commission? Who's approving it first, and how is that working?
It's going to, assuming there's consensus direction today, it will be on the Historic Preservations Board May agenda, and then it's coming back to the City Commission for formal adoption as a master plan.
So it doesn't come back to our board at all?
No, but what?
Just when we ask you to pay for it.
Right. You will be seeing this quite frequently.
Captain, you knew the answer to that, right?
Just checking. So the answer to who's paying for it is the CRA.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
You're welcome.
I also would like to thank the core group, I think many of whom have been working on this for about 3 years, going back to that initial iteration. And I know Rob spent a lot of time on it, and congratulate the consultants as well. And I really like the idea that it is in phases, so we can kind of test it as we go along. But I do have some concerns, and I start with the fact that this is the most important part of the most important public space we have in this city. It really helps define the city and make it unique. I don't think there's any other city in Florida that has a public square like this. And I know in the first iteration, the RFQ had some language in it, time is of the essence. I don't believe that this is time of the essence. We only have one chance to get this right. And I'm a bit uncomfortable that we could be making a decision that could extend out 25, 35, 45 years here tonight after only discussing it for an hour and 45 minutes. And expending $11 million plus, which, as far as I know, may be the largest public expenditure we've ever made as a city, certainly from our own funds. I guess the federal highway traffic calming was around $16 million, but a lot of that was federal funds, I think. And my concerns really get down to details, and they really are in 4 areas, Bob. Activities, programming, maintenance, and then finally cost. I think we kind of touched on the cost. But one of the things, I guess in full disclosure, I tried to do something called Square Play some years ago and really try to activate Old School Square. Because outside of events, that space is quite often very empty. And as part of this process, I haven't really seen an articulation of what activities we do believe are going to go on here. For example, is the drumming circle anticipated on being here? Is Space of Mind's athletic activities going to be on here? Are there going to be Frisbee games? And we could go on and on. Are there going to be activities from the Cornell Museum that are actually on the outside, so part of the museum moves outside? And if so, do we have a platform for it? So I think there's an old saying that form follows function. I'm not sure we've defined what the functions are that we'd like to see here. Second thing is programming. In this effort to do Square Play, I found that programming is a tough thing to do in Old School Square, as Rob and his team and Suzanne Fisher, I think, out there have found out. Not only do we need a place to store chairs, we need a place to store beanbags and jump ropes and volleyballs and badminton, if those are functions that are going to be out there. Are we going to allow dogs out there and dogs running? We did a pop-up dog park, which was I have to say, I think was a huge success. Perhaps 100 dogs came out, most of them all from Worthing Place. It's amazing the number of large dogs that live downtown in Delray. But they and their owners came out and ran back and forth. So again, that's kind of both function and programming. That took a lot of work, putting up the fences, making sure the little dogs were separated from the big dogs, and et cetera. And then just cleaning things up afterwards. So I'm worried about that. And then I'm also worried about maintenance. We have a number of public fountains in this city which have been non-functioning for many years. And do we believe that we have the maintenance wherewithal to maintain something that is this extensive as a fountain? And what are some of the details? We want to be sustainable. We're talking about sustainability, but is this recycled water? Is it going to be chlorinated water? You know, what are the details on this? I am worried about the trees. Bob and I have had these discussions over the years. I see only palm trees on Swinton, which I think makes the walk from the corner of Atlantic and Swinton to Crest Theater pretty hot during the middle of the summer. And I did see in the budget there's something like $100,000 for tree removal, even though we've said there's not going to be tree removal. And I could go on, but I won't. The one last thing I'd like to ask about is what about that alley? We are showing the alley off of First Avenue that goes behind all the commercial areas as being used by this park, by this public space. And yet we all know for a fact there's big 16-wheelers that go in there to deliver groceries or supplies for the restaurants and linen trucks and so forth. So I'm just wondering, and perhaps I've missed it or perhaps that hasn't been shown tonight, whether some of these details and activities and programming that have been mentioned. And Rob, you said that if we have 20 events a year, we'll make money on this. I'd actually like to see that. If we're spending $5 million to build an amphitheater, I'd like to see the models that show how we make money. We made a big investment in a tennis center many years ago with the idea that it was going to make money, and it lies fallow a good part of the time.
If I may respond to just a few of Jim's comments. The activation you and I have talked about this for a long time. We've worked firsthand on some of these projects. The ability to show movies on the screen on the side of the Crest Theater and then having a stage area underneath that, the hope there is to encourage someone to just walk up and play a guitar and people sit down and listen to it, or just come over and watch a free movie on the side. So again, the lesson we learned when we were doing the pop-up dog park and square play, there's a cost associated with it. You can try and keep it low with volunteers and everything, but you need a place to store things, and I think underneath the amphitheater would be an ideal place where it would be easy to get to those. Old School Square, you mentioned a lot about cost. How do we keep this rolling? For 27 years, we've done it by gosh and by golly, without a good plan. And square play, if it was properly funded, $20,000 or $40,000 a year, you could activate the place twice a month with that, and it's free and bring everyone in. We have today over 3,000 public offerings a year at Old School Square with a staff of 20, and we haven't had proper revenue streams for 27 years. So we need to fix that in the overall scheme of things with all this. In terms of maintenance, part of the design, the increase in hardscape in the areas where you need it, I think will help us a lot on the maintenance front, and then controlling what activities can happen in other areas will help us a lot on that front. In programming, I have 15 years experience booking events, and I know how that game works and how to make it work so that it is a strong revenue stream. And I think you need to also be using it for, as I said, a hybrid balance between local community events and touring events, so that you get that great use in there, in activations in all those areas. And then we're also looking at privatizing some of the maintenance costs outside to make sure we can keep up the grounds, keep them looking in tip-top shape.
I would just like to add to your suggestion. I had a resident approach me while I was campaigning, and she'd like to initiate chess sets throughout the city. Now, I don't know if that's always a big draw, especially if we really have a nice setting. I'm not aware of where we could put it, how much it would cost, but that would be a draw.
Yeah, we have a chess board, actually.
We have a chess board? Okay, I missed it. Sorry.
It's on the way over on Pineapple Grove Way. It's a chess board layout there.
One other area I think that would make sense to detail is what we would be doing when that garage south facade is opened up. I think that's a brilliant idea. I love the doors that you showed. But are those going to be commercial ventures? Are they going to be businesses that are there week-round? Are they going to compete with ventures on Atlantic Avenue? Is the library going to have a branch extension in there? I think we need to.
The library. No.
That's a great idea. What the mayor brought up was it's a business incubation spot where you can come in and try out a business, and if it works, you can become a commercial renter on Atlantic Avenue or in West Atlantic or wherever. Find a spot. A prime example from the Green Market was the French Bakery. They came and started with a table at the Green Market, and now it's a thriving, tax-paying business in Delray Beach.
Let me clear up one thing, a couple of things you said. One is the tree removal is moving trees. We're not intending to cut down a single tree. That's to move trees into other locations. That's the intention of that. Plus, we're going to add trees. The landscape plan has a lot of the things you're talking about for detailed design. They haven't been done. So it will be. I mean, I'm listening to you. We're hearing your concerns. I think they're understandable, but we haven't designed it yet, really. We just conceptualized everything.
That it's just a little confusing because it has relocated trees and trees removed. So.
One thing is that there are a number of invasives that will need to be removed, and so we did want to put some budget in there to remove invasive species, as well as anything that is too old or decayed to relocate. So part of it is just, this is a budget, so we want to make sure we have everything covered.
Commissioner Katz?
Yes,
Oh, hold on, Mitch, before you say, to respond to Vice Mayor's comment about the alley, you want to add something?
Yeah.
You know, the design of the park goes up to the limits of the city-owned park, and which is the north side of those parking spaces that abut the park. The concept would be, what would be great if that was redeveloped and they design it so they front the park. This design just relates to the park and the surrounding the edges of the property, does not deal with the private property. So the design fits well, even in the concept that if they don't move forward, you still on the perimeters have your increased hardscape for the market, but yet in the interior, you're increasing that green space. So whether that proceeds or not, we don't know. We're more concerned with what the city controls.
Yeah, thank you.
The alley is
Just something that
closed.
was brought up by the public
The
as
alley's not
an
ours.
idea.
I know that. That's why I raised it.
Commissioner Katz, you.
So, yeah, that was one thing. I know the alley can't go anywhere because it's not ours. The question is, and that is a good question, is there access still to that alley from that roadway right there?
Currently, there is. The idea would be if they were to redevelop that site, they might have more of a, like you would see in a mall for a service area, which could involve abandoning the alley. That's something the city would obviously need to approve. It could be an exchange of land where, you know, you swap the location. It's just something that would need to be worked out.
But for now, because it is important, it'd be hard for trucks to be able to turn around there. They'd still be able to make that circle. That's a good question. Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I think I forgot at the beginning to thank all the volunteers who've put so many hours into this. And no disrespect intended to the Vice Mayor, but while, yes, this is our first time looking at this, and we need to make it somewhat of a decision to start an hour and a half, we did make a decision about at least a year ago to say that we weren't going to be the ones to design this. We were going to turn this over to the Delray Beach citizens, and they were going to come back with an idea. And they've put hundreds of hours into this. There are many aspects of this plan that I personally, like the steps, the amphitheater part, that to me is way out of what I would ever want in there. But we decided consciously over a year ago.
2 years ago.
2 years ago that we weren't going to be the ones to make that decision. So while I might disagree with it, I kind of have to suck it up and say, okay, I'm willing to go with it because this is what our community, after so many meetings, came together and gave us. I think we can make some tweaks and some suggestions maybe, but I think what we're looking at tonight is saying kind of the overall concept, are we okay with it? And then the historic board might come and say, you know what, they've got a couple tweaks or some ideas to add to it. And then it's still going to come back to us again to adopt, or we can tweak some final things at the last minute. But that's part of the toughest thing is that we did turn this over to them, and we kind of have to go with it to a point. I mean, part of it is funding. I get you $11 million, a lot of money, and that's why it's phased. I don't know if phase 4 will ever get here unless they figure out, and that's going to be in the onus, I think, a lot of Mr. Steele over there, who is the expert marketer, to find somebody that wants that to be, you know, Jim Chard Amphitheater and donate $5 million. So if anybody has $5 million, you know, that phase can move a lot faster too. You know, phase 4 can become phase 1 if, you know, Capital One's opening up in Delray Beach and they want to make it Capital One Amphitheater. I bet you that phase could move up a little bit faster. But I think that's going to be a lot on, and I don't think Rob would have even allowed this to be in there if he didn't have the confidence that he could help get some people to help fund that. Am I speaking out of?
No.
Okay.
I'm guardedly confident that we'll be able to find someone that will step up. I've met a number of people here that their $5 million is like my $5, and I think there's somebody out there. The decision is a lot easier to make when you can see it all, when you're surrounded by these beautiful surroundings, and you say, now you can come in and finish it off. There's some appeal there.
And that's how some of our neighboring cities have gotten the book, you know, Meisner Amphitheaters, Countless to Horn. People like that have we have people in this community that live on the beach area that have a lot of money that might want their name left in legacy and something like that, so.
And just one response there, Commissioner Katz. I'm not disagreeing with what you said in terms of the physical design. I think I tried to compliment the effort at the beginning of my comments. It's more the soft aspects of it in terms of the programming and the maintenance, that we don't end up with a beautiful white elephant. We actually have something that draws people there every day of the week.
Thank you. Mr. Cox.
You know I have to say. So these are just comments. I don't need really a response, but I think this is an example of when you slow a process down. This process has been at least a two-year process before it came to the CRA board for funding. And here's an example when you kind of slow down, listen to the public, get some community input. This is the kind of product that you can get, it's definitely a tremendous improvement, from where we started. I would have, just to piggyback off of Commissioner Bernadette's comments regarding some physical inclusiveness in the site, some Afrocentric inclusiveness in the site because of the proximity, to the set, as far as, for example, in the ground plane, with the walkways and the axes, there's some opportunity, for some components there, I think, that can really reflect, more of the community. There may be some opportunities there. I'll share that. And then also the cost. We have to look at this, holding the professionals, holding the contract, holding them accountable, looking at the right contract to eventually go into for this, maybe a guaranteed maximum price or something to that extent, where when we're looking at this budget, it doesn't turn into double the cost. We really got to look at this thing up front where, it's coming before our board, coming before the city commission, where we're in a sense locked into approving astronomical costs because of some things we didn't anticipate up front. So I would encourage us to look at, the right type of contract for something like this, so we don't get exploding costs from what we thought they were going to be. And I know programming, I've talked with Rob, programming can go a long way towards that inclusiveness that we talked about, but I do think there's some opportunity, like I say, in particular in these walkways. I mean, you got some major, wonderful axes here, and the steps, as far as there's opportunity. I actually do think that the amphitheater, as far as the stepping of the grass and the steps, giving people opportunity, flexibility to bring chairs or also sit with towers there. Also, the face of the curbs on how that's going to be built into the land. There's just many opportunities where you kind of can engage some culture, and we can look at that. That would be nice. But otherwise, for me, looking at this thing from where it started from, the core committee, the community engagement, slowing it down a little bit. It's really, when I look at this, I guess, Bob, which is your money? Is the back shot? Is that your money shot? The back pick? The last shot, is that your money shot?
I thought that the night shot was
The
the
night
money
shot? Is
shot
that
is
the money
mine,
shot?
but others, actually, I really like the one along the garage. That shows the kind
Like
of
that shot?
fun
Okay.
and activity.
So I say that to say, if, looking at this is a place where I would want to hang out and enjoy. So, thanks.
You're invited.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reggie. Kathy?
So, just for clarification, because it's confusing me just a little bit. If the historic board's gonna see it next, commission's gonna see maybe the next phase, and then it's coming back to our CRA, and the cost becomes double, such as what Commissioner Cox is saying, I mean, is our board supposed to just say, okay? I mean.
No, I think at this point,
Because-
well, yes, actually, yes.
I'm a little confused about how that works.
Now that you bring it up, no. Just the sequence is, because it is a historic property, it's going back to HPB. I don't think that meeting is going to be one of picking it apart, given the comments that some of the others have had about how this has already been circulated, but it is part of the planning department's protocol because it's a historically designated property and it's in the historic district. It's going to require their approval. The commission is going to see this again, and presumably it would be an approved master plan, and I think from there we're going to have a series of discussions, the CRA and the commission, as to how we're going to pay for this. As you may know, the city is working on a non-ad valorem bond for the penny tax, and so that we capture that revenue up front, and we're receiving repayment of that over the next 10 years. This may be something for consideration of that. At least we'll afford ourselves the flexibility of building that in, but the funding is going to be a conversation after adoption of the plan. I think Vice Mayor Chard's comment, though, is important, and I think that you're addressing a rate of return relative to that programming is important as we collectively sell this to the taxpayers of the city. We have a lot of confidence in Old School Square. I think that you and your team have just a lot of positive energy. But we heard that before with the tennis stadium, as somebody brought up. I can hear it as if it were yesterday, the promises of, if you put on a tennis tournament, I'll find you sponsors and you'll be turning them away. And look, this is not a for-profit exercise. You're just trying to bridge the gap of cost, maintenance, and this programming that a lot of people have been clamoring for. So I think that is a reasonable request, understanding that you can't quantify everything that's going to happen, but in your field of expertise, that when we start getting into how are we going to pay for it, I think that's going to be an important part of the conversation. In terms of the Vice Mayor's comment about programming, that has been one of the, in terms of the single most discussed comment on this. How are we going to use it? Starting from when we saw the presentation a while back, which was all the, it was quite different than this, but Fred Kent, who spoke to us, who's got his own views on what this should be, cautioned us, which I think was appropriate, that architects like stuff, and landscape architects, and I can say that with some impunity because my colleague's up here, but I'm kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's not architecture if there's just grass there. And to me, one of the most compelling pictures that I've ever seen in any presentation was one of the first ones you brought to the commission. Maybe it was Bill, Bob, I forget what it was, but it was a young boy just laying in the grass looking up at the clouds. And I say that kind of euphemistically, but I think part of what people have wanted in the park, what we see first and foremost from Atlantic Avenue, is the simplicity of a park that seems accessible to all. That the more stuff you add, to Joe's comment, it creates barriers to some that wow, that's so fancy, maybe I don't belong there. So I'd ask you to keep that. I recognize, I think everybody recognizes that you can't figure out all the activities that are going to happen there. And I think in a large measure, you've done a very good job in terms of segregating where those possibilities can exist. So the green is obviously open if there's not something going on. All those things that Vice Mayor Chard mentioned, Frisbee, chess, whatever it may be, there's drum circles, there's the opportunity for those ad hoc activities. If you want to use a park for a park, I think part of the problem that a lot of people have expressed, at least to me, is that because of how much it was overused on the front, there was no time for anybody else to use it. It was an art event, it was a holiday event, it was something else, and between the period of event, the destruction of the event after they left, it was no longer a public park. And so returning that to the public, I think, is very important, and that's incumbent upon you to exercise restraint in terms of what that frontage is going to be, or those attributes are going to be in terms of fitting in that programming. But I think the request for that rate of return based on what you think is appropriate. I have one just technical comment, and if anybody else has anything, is it looked like the fountain in the back, the number of steps didn't match the grade from the side. In other words, the side shot looked very steep. To get up to that top, it was going to be a fairly dramatic incline, so that it was blocking your visibility looking east and west. But if you look at it from the back where the fountain is, it doesn't look as precipitous to go up. And maybe that's just the water versus the side. So what do you expect the different, there's a bit of it's flat now for the most part. What do you think is the elevation change from front to back?
9 feet, I think we are, aren't we?
Right. We're looking at a maximum height of 9 feet so that we can get the storage underneath for the chairs and other program items. And then there would be some amount of blank wall. We're looking at the fountain so that people aren't leaning over into that fountain from above. So we're looking at about a 6 to 7 foot fountain and then a 9 foot platform.
Okay, that's pretty high.
It is high. And part of that is so that we are blocking the visual view of the performance from Atlantic Avenue to help encourage paid programming in a way, and also so that you do experience that fountain.
Did that answer it?
Yeah, sure. Oh, yes, sir.
I just have a couple comments.
So let me just, I'm sorry, real quick. So that's going to be actually a structure above the,
yes,
that's
we'll have about a 20-foot wide structure on that back 2 tiers of the steps of grass, which will all be for storage, not only just for the chairs, but for other functions and other storage elements. They need a lot more storage.
So it looked like from the sides, you would be walking up from both the east and west sides.
Well, that's interesting you say that. I didn't mention that. Yes, there's stairs coming up on both sides, particularly on the east side, because we also wanted to have those as kind of seats that could look out at the tree or look out at activities in the park. And by the way, the green area is twice as big as the green area as there is now.
Right.
So,
and actually, there'll be steps on 3 sides. The only side that will not have steps is the side facing Atlantic Avenue.
Thank you.
that's right.
Question on that same front, and that step, and I think what Vice Mayor Char was talking about, the cost of maintenance, is definitely a concern. We've got now that you'll have one fountain in the front, you're going to have the fountain where the Christmas tree is going to go, and now this huge fountain in the back. Did the groups that looked this over look at any other options besides a fountain in the back, like maybe a wall, an art wall, public art displays, or some type of something that might be a little bit less, costly not only to build but more importantly to maintain?
We talked about this one big arched fountain was really sort of the big show fountain. The other fountains were the ones that were talked about as ways that they could be repurposed or eliminated, such as the paving under the Christmas tree Also, we talked about having sort of these like firefly night sky dotting lights so that it doesn't have to be a fountain. It could be more of a light play area. We did talk about other things to bring it down to just that one fountain.
Is this a fountain where kids can play in it, or is the other fountain one of those?
No, this one, the curved one, is not one the kids can play in, just the one underneath the Christmas tree whenever the Christmas tree
Right.
is not there. The other thing that was important to the public meetings was the mentions of fountains. It's a cooling aspect. It's also a sound kind of thing. It's very soothing. And I've been to this fountain that we showed a picture of, and it is jam-packed. People have weddings out there. It is a very common hot spot. That's cool. So.
Where's that at?
That's actually in Lexington, Kentucky, Triangle Park.
So it's not going to be recycled water?
We'll go look at it.
No, this will be recycled water. This has a tank, and it does recycle through, since this is not, it's not a fountain for people to play in.
That's not what you said.
I mean, it's not gray water.
It's not great.
Oh, no, it's not gray water, but it is recycled through the system. Right, and to answer the chlorination question, the only fountain that would be chlorinated is the splash fountain, and all that is pavement with little jets. But that is because children would be playing in it, would need to be chlorinated.
Yeah, I knew you had all those details, I just hadn't seen them.
Hold on, we've got another question over here.
All right, I just have a few comments, actually 5. I think this is a great project because this is basically the community coming together from different perspectives to put together a really nice plan. Some of the solutions I think we have to some of the issues is we can monetize this a little bit better if we sell bricks. Many arenas do it. I know Florida Field just did it, where we can sell bricks. And I think a lot of the people that were part of this input, you're saying thousands of people, would probably be interested in putting a brick down at a certain part of the park to monetize it and then raise money to, in case we have any budgetary needs. Another thing I'd like to see is perhaps with what Reggie and Major Bernadelle discussed, perhaps putting in some sort of historical elements to the park, not necessarily we could dedicate trees or benches to certain leaders in the community. I know we're working on something with renaming one of the streets, but there would be a nice way to honor some of the founders of our city by perhaps naming some benches after them. They're already there. It might be a way to bring a historical perspective. And then as far as the cultural perspective, I know we budget for art. We could always put different forms of art in the park, like statutes or issues such as that. And then the last thing, of course, being a lawyer, is have we looked into possible risk management issues? I know the fountain is just smelling of a lawsuit, especially the one that's stacked, and the amphitheater. I don't know. We might want to just have a risk manager see about potential for liability for some of these things, because you know what's going to happen eventually. That's it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
So we do have a place for the plaques and the bricks and so on over on Pineapple Grove Way.
Right.
Picking up what are already plaques, we got to repurpose them.
Right, but for this new project, we could maybe do,
Do a little more of that,
community row or something with bricks in addition, because, if we sell a brick for $1,000, I mean, you could easily raise $1 million in no time for programming and other things that we could use. Just a suggestion.
With regards to the historical uses in the park, we've been in conversation for a year and a half with the Delray Beach Historical Society, ways we can have wayfinding signs on our side to just get people to walk 50 feet across the street and enjoy everything they have to offer. Every customer in the Cornell Museum is told on the way out, have you visited the Delray Beach Historical Museum right around the corner?
Thank you.
Just before we wrap up, I don't want to mischaracterize it. Do we have consensus on the master plan direction? I think we would be naive to think that this isn't going to be tweaked and modified as we go along, but in terms of a general concept plan, is there a consensus to move it forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. thank you for all your work, and to the public, thank you for coming, and for the board members that have been with this for a long time. Thank you for your help. Is Francis Bork still here? I can't see because of the light. Francis, I hope you like what you see. You know, okay, a lot of this is a legacy of your work and that of others that have put so much time into Old School Square. So the next stop again will be Historic Preservation Board and back to the City Commission. Oh, sure.
I think it's wonderful to see so many people here, and this is probably representative about 25 times plus, but this is one of the happiest moments I've been able to feel in the last 2 or 3 years. What a great opportunity to see all of us working on the same page. It's terrific, and thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Reggie, and thank you all the folks that have made this happen. Just remember now, as we move forward, it is a cultural art park.
Well put. All right. Thank you all for coming, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, staff, for helping putting this up.
Okay, I'm going to say something about Francis.
Can't explain all the feelings that you're making me feel. My heart's in overdrive and you're behind the steering wheel. Touching you, touching me, touching you, are you touching me? I believe in a thing called love, just listen to the rhythm of my heart. There's a chance we can make it now. We'll be rocking till the sun goes down.